So how did we go from no slavery or involuntary servitude of the 13th Amendment to the 14th Amendment, which says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. In 1793, John Jay, Supreme Court judge, said in his opinion, at the Revolution, sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country with no one to govern them but themselves. So there was nobody enforcing any laws upon us because we were the kings. Sovereign means king. So how did we go from being a king to now the government being our king? Well, the secret lies in the money system and understanding the money system. Understanding the money system will help you understand how our nation has fallen. Gold is for kings, which we were kings and gold was money, according to the Constitution. And silver is for gentlemen, barter is for peasants, and debt is for slaves. So every dollar that is circulated, that is in our pockets, is a bill. That means that $1 has to be paid back to the Federal Reserve. So it's debt. So we are slaves. And then it's only natural that when we become slaves, that now we are under the subject of something. The 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The United States is now a corporation owned by international bankers because we're now bankrupt. We use their money. And so when we went from the gold standard to fiat currency, which is debt that has to be paid back to the international bankers through the Federal Reserve, now the law has to coincide with that. So now that people are slaves, the borrower is a slave to the lender and the rich rule the poor. And Thomas Jefferson said the challenge is today, as it has been throughout history, whether we will be allowed to govern ourselves or be ruled by a small elite. So we're being ruled by the bankers right now. We're under their jurisdiction. We were born or naturalized through paperwork, through the birth certificate process. And this is how we enter into their jurisdiction, is through the birth certificate and social security card. Edward Mandell House had this to say in a private meeting with Woodrow Wilson in 1913 at the passage of the Federal Reserve Act. He said, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people. That's biological property is our children. Register is the birth certificate. In a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. We're pledging our children for the debt. That's Ezekiel 23:37 for this fiat currency. By such methodology, we can compel the people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, they will be our slaves, and they will hold the security interest over them forever. See, it's only natural for borrowers to not understand this. That's why it's so important to trust in the Lord and to owe no man, because what happens is you are easily deceived. That's why the Bible says they were drunk on the wine of her fornication, because you're too busy paying back your loans. The borrower is a slave to the lender. So that's how we became subject. That's how they have power over us. You know, this government is owned by international bankers. Everyone that you come in contact with, the police officer, the city, anybody in this system collects a paycheck, and they don't care about the truth. So you'll never find the truth because they simply do a job and they collect a paycheck, all working for the international bankers. And we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secure transactions. This is going back to the quote of Edward Mandell House. He said, every Americans by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights. So this is where you give up your rights. When you sign to these documents, the birth certificate, social security card, you are giving up your rights and you are accepting privileges because you're a slave. Slaves have privileges. Kings have rights. So they will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value and designed to make us profit, and that will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans, and if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government. And remember, George Washington said, but if in the pursuit of the means of funding government, we should happen to stumble again upon unfunded paper money or any other species of fraud. So the reason it's a fraud is because fiat currency is a lie. It makes people rich. So this is never disclosed. This is never taught in schools because the bankers will not teach you, since our country is owned by them. They're not going to teach you the way this works and how you've given up your rights and now they have control over you. They won't tell you because it's a fraud. Fraud is using deception to take one's property and rights. So after all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. So this is the pickpocket trick. They will distract you with benefits and privileges. Oh, well, you have a privilege to drive. And then a slave will go, yeah, okay, I guess I'll have to pay for that privilege. That's slavery. And that's how we go from the 13th Amendment, which says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. Now, through these contracts, we are giving up our sovereignty, and now we are voluntarily serving and being subject to the United States according to the 14th Amendment. Beyond our wildest expectations, and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. So the Social Security card is a fraud because it's simply a contract where you are not given full details of that contract. Our country is in bankruptcy. It's hiding in the dark. It's a wicked nation that never wants to come to the light and talk and disclose the details of how we've given up our rights, and without realizing it, because people are slaves, they don't think and they just can't see the truth. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss which we will incur in this manner. Every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without hope in their redemption. Once this word gets out, this whole system's going to crash, because simply the whole government's operating in fraud. It's fraudulent. They have no right to tell you what to do. When an officer says, "Get on the ground," basically he's saying, "Be my slave, you stupid slave." That's what he's saying. And whenever a cop tells you what to do, whenever a city says that you have to obey a code, it's fraudulent, because they didn't tell you the details. They can only recognize you if you have a contract, a Social Security card and birth certificate. They won't recognize you if you don't have these instruments, because the world is wicked and they can't recognize the truth. That's why they crucified Christ. That's why it's so hard to gain your sovereignty and freedom in a bankrupted country, because everybody's collecting a paycheck. That's what George Washington talked about when he said, if in the pursuit of the means we should happen to stumble again upon unfunded paper money or any other species of fraud, it will enter the body of politics like spirit liquors enter the body, because it makes you drunk. You can't see clear. These government agents can't see clear, because all they care about is doing their job and getting a paycheck, and that's the drunkenness that this fiat currency offers them. So and that's why the Bible says the inhabitants were made drunk. So we're all inhabitants. The cops are inhabitants, the city's inhabitants, they're all made drunk off this fiat currency, which is the idols of Babylon. And it's so important to understand that Babylon will be taken in one night, in 1 hour. So once this fraud is disclosed to the nations, the international bankers are going to lose their grip and their power, and the people will be set free. And then Isaiah 14 says that people will break out in singing. So just tell your neighbor that this is a fraud. Explain to them, try to learn and figure out. God says in all you're getting, get understanding. So understand this and figure it out. Thank you.